Hello, welcome back to Up the Villa opposition preview. Arsenal v Aston Villa, joined by James. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. I'm very good, thank you. We've just come off the back of a very nice North London derby win. So the mood in the camp has changed quickly, and there's a lot of transfer talk floating around at the moment, which is always good for Arsenal fans, especially with our situation.
Yeah, well, I did see a couple of days ago you were a little rumour of Duran, so that's sort of disappeared, and you're looking at Sesko now. So kind of feel a bit better about that now. So yeah, so how's your season been as a whole? I mean, from a fan from afar, it looks like it's been a bit sort of not up and down, but not as plain sailing as what you'd probably hoped it was going to be.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment. It's a really weird one because we've kind of not really got started yet. We're still second in the league, 4 points off top. Admittedly, Liverpool have a game in hand. And we're third in the Champions League, and I believe you're fourth as well. So it's a really weird one because we haven't played well all season. Our attack hasn't got started apart from Saka, but here we are really fighting on two fronts. We've crashed out of two cups, which is again a really bitter pill to swallow, but perhaps something that will benefit us in the long term. But it's very hard to see it that way. But it's a good position to be where we are, having not played well, and the potential that if we do start playing well in the second half of the season, as we did last year, who knows what will happen.
So what's sort of been sort of the reason why you are sort of like stumbling at times? Because I think a couple of seasons ago when you sort of weren't expected to win the league and you were just blitzing teams, and now it feels a little bit different. So has Arteta sort of like tweaked your system a little bit this season?
I think it's a number of things. I know every team suffers with injuries, but the timing of our injuries, the number of our injuries has been really frustrating. So we lost Erdegaard for a few months, which led us to have to change the system, primarily because we don't really have a backup in this system for Erdegaard. And then straight after Erdegaard comes back for a few games, we lose Saka for 3 months. So those two of our arguably most important players, Declan Rice has been carrying a knock on and off all season. Ben White's had to have surgery for 3 months. And then on top of that, we've had some games just with ridiculous red cards. And whether you agree with it or not, for whatever reason, we've gone into those games with a plan. And that plan's quickly gone out the window because Declan Rice has towed the ball away and been sent off. And then Trossard booted the ball away next game, sent off. So there's a lot of different factors that come into it. And I think a few players also just not hitting form at the right time. But again, we're in a decent position. So now we will have to dig into the transfer market because of the injuries to Jesus' ACL and to who else are we missing? Saka, of course, for a few months. We need reinforcements, but that could propel us for the rest of the season. Who knows?
Yeah, touching on sort of like recruitment then, how was the summer recruitment? Was it sort of like a success? Because I don't mean everybody goes, don't they? Arsenal need a striker, Arsenal need a striker. And you look like you are going to sign a striker. So has that position sort of meant that you're not quite there yet? Or are you fully happy with like Havertz?
No. I like Havertz, and he had a really, really strong end to last season. And there's been reports come out of the club recently that said Havertz's form at the back end of last season is what has put needing a striker on the back burner a little bit. If we had the opportunity, we looked at Sesko. But the talk with Sesko was that would he be happy perhaps playing second fiddle to Havertz if Havertz continues this form? Sesko said, best thing for my development is to keep playing as first striker. Completely understand that. But because of it, we thought, well, with the way Havertz has been playing, Jesus exists, Trossard exists, we can find solutions. We'll get away with it. And a lot of people talk about how we needed an attacker. We shouldn't have signed Calafiori and we shouldn't have signed Marino. The problem is we needed bodies in defence as well because Tomiyasu's been injured, Ben White's been injured, Timber's off the back of an ACL. So we're very fortunate that Miles Lewis-Skelly, who I don't know if you watched the game yesterday, he's been unbelievable lately. So we've been blessed that he's been available because Calafiori hasn't, and then Marino's not hit the ground running. So we're in a situation where people look at our signings and go, they were terrible signings, but we did only spend 70 million, which sounds absurd, but 70 million barely gets you a Duran nowadays.
Yeah, and I think you know, looking at Skelly, for example, I think it's really good to see a young player that goes into a team and starts flourishing. You've got that winger as well. Is his name Wanyeri?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, another one that has been playing quite well for you and sort of like an up and coming player. We've had sort of a couple of players that Emery's tried to integrate into the first team, and they've just not been able to get to that level that's required. So I think players like Skelly are performing really well. So this season, who would you say has been your most standout player so far?
Well, Saka before his injury, of course. So you'll be glad to know that he will definitely not be playing, barring a miracle tomorrow. I think Declan Rice, when he's been available, has put in a good shift. But as I say, he's struggled to play 2 games a week at the moment. So I think he'll start, but he might look a little bit jaded against you. But the standout performer for me, and has been for a long time now, is Gabriel. He's an absolute man mountain at the back. And not only did he contribute towards the goal, whether you want to say he got the assist, whether he didn't even get the assist for the own goal, he scared them into heading the ball into their own net. But also defensively, he was a rock yesterday and made some really, really key interceptions. So I think tomorrow will be interesting because the goal we did concede was a deflection. And apart from that, we really didn't give Spurs that many chances. So I think it'll be a cagey game.
Yeah, I think we'll touch on your set pieces then. Your guy Jova, who gets a lot of headlines, doesn't he? But I don't know whether you're aware of a guy called McPhee. So McPhee's is our set piece guy, and our set piece guy goes under the radar a little bit. I think you've scored 11 goals from set pieces, and we've scored 8. So there's going to be like a bit of a battle, I think, on the touchline of it, who's top dog. And I think McPhee will obviously try and stop you from scoring from a set piece. And I think Emery spoke in the game at the start of the season about really limiting your amount of corners that you had. And at Villa Park, you only had one corner. And I think Emery was really big on sort of stopping you getting the corners to start with. So I'm going to ask you, like, how do you stop this corner? Because it feels like it's gone on for a bit too long now that you're able to, like, you've got this routine that you do over and over, and it always goes in. Like, how do you stop it? I mean,
it's a difficult one, really, because I think what people don't realize is, yes, we do have certain corners that you'll see us do constantly, all the time, rinse and repeat these same strategies. But also because we just allocate a lot of time in training to corners, we have so many more routines than other teams. So yes, often we go to the back post, but often Gabriel comes straight through the middle. Often he'll come through the front post. Often we'll put it right on the keeper's dome. Sometimes we'll go short. So it's a really weird situation because unless other teams start spending as much time on the training pitch as Arsenal do for corners, there's not a lot you can do. And it's interesting because you mentioned about kind of how we've suffered this season and lack of fluidity. I think our emphasis on corners has taken some time away from us coaching the attack. I think this is why our attack often looks blunt and confused when we come up against low blocks. But something that we benefit from is allocating so much time to corners. We have, and they have their codes. Gabriel will go over to the corner taker. He'll speak something, and then something happens. And quite often, if it doesn't end in a goal, it ends in a shot on target or a threat. What will be really interesting, I think, from my perspective, is whether you decide to leave players up, because I think it was Sporting Lisbon, the first team to do it in the Champions League, left 3 men up. And then Spurs did it, left 2 men up at the weekend, midweek even. And lots of teams are trying to find different strategies about how not just to directly influence it, but how to indirectly. Can you take men out the box through other strategies? So this potentially is something that we'll see Villa do for the first time, maybe.
Yeah. I kind of feel like when you take players out the box, you're adding more space. So I kind of feel like it's a bit of a problem in the box that
so do I.
more space to exploit. You kind of feel like, okay, you got players up, so we have to leave players. But I think why teams do bring a lot of players back is that you're sort of limiting that space as well. And we have got Monaco coming up, and you played Monaco a couple of weeks ago, and I think they left a couple up as well. So, what were your thoughts on Monaco when you played them?
God, remind me. I can't remember what the score was. I feel like we
I think it was 3
comfortably.
0.
Yeah, I was going to say that feels like quite a comfortable win. Um, Monaco, it was quite an underwhelming game. I don't know. It was the Champions League new format this season really does confuse me, as I'm sure it does with yourself. Um, but it's just one of those games that I don't think we played especially well, but Monaco didn't put much of a resistance up. So I think you'll have. Is it at home?
We're away.
Okay, so maybe it'll be a little bit more difficult, but truthfully, I think you'll get through that, and then you'll be in the top 8 of the Champions League. So happy days.
Yeah, but hopefully we avoid the English teams in the next round, whatever we're playing. So
Is
I
that
feel like that.
possible? Can they do
I don't
English
know.
teams?
I don't know. I think it is. I think there's no. I think after this next phase, I think anyone can play anyone. But I don't know
That
whether
makes sense.
there is a phase where it's a bit seeded as well. So whoever finishes first, I think, can't place like second until the final. So
I don't know.
um, yeah, it's a bit of a mess. But so yeah. So what are your sort of like aspirations then for the rest of the season as an Arsenal fan?
I think we've been challenging for long enough now to say that the aspiration is a title, either the Premier League or Champions League. If we manage to turn a 2-0 deficit at St James's Park around, then I'd be very impressed. But it's not likely, especially with the way Newcastle are playing. So a title, and that sounds ridiculous of me to kind of shrug it off like that, considering we've not won a title in many years. But this is where we're at as a team. I think we are top 3 teams in the world right now. With the way City are playing, I think you'd have Real Madrid and Liverpool, and then I see no reason why we're not top 3 or even top 5, maybe. So we, again, pending us signing a striker, I think we'll definitely get one attacker. I'm not sure if we'll get 2, but definitely one. And I see no reason, again, if Saka's back for the run-in, we've been drawing a few games in the league this season, but we don't tend to lose. So that'll be an interesting thing in Europe, where if you draw, it goes to penalties, and we'll see how that goes. David Raya didn't have his best performance against United, as many people have seen, but I think we are a decent team at penalties most of the time. So I want a title, and everyone wants a title, but I think these players have the quality to deliver now. Saliba today was just announced in the team of the year, so that shows that some of our players now are really at the very top of their game.
Do you feel like, as an Arsenal fan, that Liverpool will have a blip or drop off, or do you feel like they're just going to keep going now?
The thing is, whether they have a blip or not is quite a difficult thing to say, but they will be worse in the second half of the season because one, nothing really went against them in the first half of the season. They had a very fit squad, and in general, things they got the rub of the green. What I will say is there's a lot of talk about Trent going to Madrid. And I don't know if you've seen this, but they have so many away games against the bigger teams in the second half of the season that I do think it's going to be interesting that if they don't win against Brentford away next week, which is a very tough fixture, all of a sudden they'll be, assuming we beat you, all of a sudden they'll be literally, 2 points ahead of us? And then it's squeaky bum time, even though it's 5 points if they beat Everton in the game in hand. That's no distance, especially with a team like Arsenal, who last season have shown that we can go 16 games unbeaten before losing to you, losing to you near the end. But yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure on Liverpool now, and it will be interesting to see. These are seasoned pros, plenty of them. But again, with the Trent stuff, I think it'll be interesting to see how certain disruption could perhaps snowball into more nervousness.
Yeah, there are going to be like twists and turns. It's just not going to be like Liverpool just go with it and
And it's one of
you
the
know,
most difficult Premier League seasons we've seen in a long time.
yeah,
Every team can beat every team. We've seen that you've got players like Mateus Cunha playing for Wolves who could potentially get relegated. I'm sure they'll be fine, but he's a Champions League quality player, and some of the managers down at the bottom half as well just show that there's so much quality in this league.
yeah. So, what have you made of Villa so far this season?
It's been a weird one because I sometimes check the table and Villa. I checked a few months ago and Villa were like 11th, just quietly lost a few games. I haven't checked where you are now. If I was to guess, I'd say sixth or seventh.
Seventh.
Okay, so you've quietly had a resurgence. Um, I think some of it also comes down to Ollie Watkins. Last season, obviously, he had the best season of his career. Everything he touched turned to gold. This season, I didn't see why. I don't know. Did he suffer an injury? Because there was a period where he was out the team a little bit.
Yeah, so he was out for like 2 games, but his form's just dipped off a little bit. And Duran had around Christmas time, he was on the bench. Duran was playing like 4 games in a row, and then Duran got a red, so he's been back in. So he scored against Everton. So I think he's got 9 goals so far this season, Watkins. So
Which is not, it's not a terrible return, but
no,
the Watkins of last season, who was scoring from half chances, if you're gonna punch above your weight and get top four, because if we're serious, the teams above you do have far more significant resources to spend with. For you to get there, I do think a player like Ollie Watkins has to kind of be on fire because the teams around you have Salah and these guys who are having crazy seasons. So and for example, Cole Palmer, if you're challenging for the top four, Chelsea have Cole Palmer who will bail them out every week. You have a very collectively impressive team, but individually, probably no one at the same level, with all due respect. Someone that I've enjoyed watching this season, especially against Man City, was Youri Tielemans. I think the midfield of him and Onana makes. I know there's other players, Kamara as well, not to downplay his importance, but I think that midfield is so well constructed in that Tielemans is allowed to do what he excels at most without having to worry about doing too much of the dog work. Because I think in the past, where Tielemans has struggled, he's been made to defend large spaces. And we both know that's not Tielemans' game. Someone who does excel in that is Onana, who I think he's an absolute monster. I think he's one of the best midfielders in the league. And yeah, he's been on top of that, been adding goals to his game this season. So as you mentioned earlier about set pieces, he's a massive threat.
yeah. So finally, then, how do you think the game's going to go? Is Unai going to come and haunt the Emirates again, or do you think you'll be able to sort of have too much for us?
Surely we've learned our lesson because we've come up against this Unai mid-block plenty of times. Um, but every time we come up against you, I think, all right, we know what we're coming up against. Surely we find a solution, and we haven't. So it will be interesting. And earlier this season, actually, the win that we got, I don't think we actually deserve to win. I think, unlike other seasons where we've been quite unlucky, Trossard's missed a sitter, Martinez has made a great save. I think this season we got quite lucky against you, and we didn't play that well. It's difficult because I just see our creativity, and I don't know where the chance creation is going to come from. And I have a feeling Emery will have a good plan against Ødegaard, and he will know that if you cut off the supply line to and from Ødegaard, then we will struggle to create chances. So as I said before, I think it's going to be an incredibly cagey game. I'll go with a 1-0 to Arsenal. Could be from a set piece, but I think it will be, as I say, kind of both teams being very risk averse, and us trying to find solutions against your block. We won't be able to, and then at some point we will break it down, and you won't have time to come back. But if you score first on the counter attack, we will be in trouble. Because if you decide to shut up shop again, I'm concerned about how it will go.
Nice one. So it's been great having you on, mate. Great chatting to you, and you've gave a really good insight onto everything Arsenal as well. So I'll tag you on socials and people can go and check out your socials as well. So cheers for coming
Thank
on,
you very
mate.
much. Nice one, Luke. See you.